Hello and welcome to a new episode of I Can Do. I'm Benjamin Lee, joined again with another fantastic guest. Wherever you're listening, really appreciate your commitment to the podcast, supporting the podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. You're in for another special treat today. We have Dave Nordel with us. And first, before we even get started, I just want to say thank you to Dave for his service to our country for over 3 decades. I really appreciate that, as all of us do, and we'll dive into that a little bit more. But Dave, welcome to the show.
Hey, God bless you, man. Hey, it's great to be here. We got to chat. I love this always because when we start, what some people don't realize is on the back end, there's always that casual conversation before you get started. So, boy, we were all over the map. We were talking podcasting and birds on my bird experience this morning and a little bit of Montana. So, yeah, we'll have fun with this. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah,
It's good.
absolutely.
That's good.
Yeah, it is interesting too, because I know you just mentioned too, you have a podcast, and I've gone back and forth with like, should I record like those conversations before like the actual recording? Because you get some really good stuff in there, like before and after. So it's like, what do you do with it,
I know. Yeah, I was on one yesterday, and when the guy got ready to hit the record button, he goes, "We just finished like half the podcast and we didn't record it." So I don't know. You might be onto something. I might take that. I might take that advice and try it.
Well, I know Joe Rogan, what he does, like and then we'll start getting into your story a little bit, where
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
he'll just start talking to the guest, and then at some point in time, I don't even know if he tells them, but he'll just hit record. So they're like already in this conversation, and it's just
Sure.
like ongoing. So I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting. But well, yeah, let's talk about you.
Let's do it.
And
Yeah.
you've been on an amazing journey. And so there's a lot of things that I want to talk about with leadership
Sure.
and moral injury and
Yeah.
PTSD. And if you can, take us back to um, and just learning more about you. I know you grew up on a farm, and then at the age
Yeah.
of 19 enrolled into the Air
Yeah.
Force. Take
Yeah.
us back to the farm and
Sure.
just some of the qualities or characteristics that you learned growing up on a farm. I know
Ah.
that certainly transitioned over into your
Yeah.
service. And then what led you getting into the Air Force ultimately?
Sure. Right. So we all got a foundation, right? We all have that grandpa or uncle or mom or dad or somebody in our life, and so in my life, I had all those people. I'm the son of a fourth generation. I'm fourth generation Portuguese immigrant. So I always joke that there's two types of Portuguese people: ones that fish and don't get seasick, and ones that dairy farm because they do get seasick. So I'm on the dairy farming side of that one. And yes, I do get seasick. I got to be careful with that. It's pretty fun. But so a big family, even though it was just me and my mom growing up. My dad left when I was 2 years old.
Mm,
And those of us that are fortunate enough that when we have a gap like that in our nuclear family, if we've got big families, people pick up a lot of that slack. It's not perfect, but you've got the people to step in, and so that led to life on the farm. Life on the dairy farm, and it's not like you know it when you're in it, Ben, but when you're on the farm, you are really on a daily basis, just getting life lessons one right after another. And it's not until you start to get out into the world that you just go, oh, well, this is like when you're weaning calves off of milk and putting them on hay and grain, and they're screaming and crying all the time. There's some similarities to those type of things, and that stuff happens. To include death and success and Mother
yeah.
Nature and persistence and work and things never being done completely, and there's always the next thing, and prioritization of time, and you just learn a whole bunch of things, and you learn that you're going to go through a variety of emotions and that type of stuff. Not that it's perfect; it's its own little world. It's got its little bubble, and so in the farm life, there's other things that you're not experienced to until you get out and moving around in the world, and some of that needed to be learned. I think I was headed for a life of service in the military when I was younger. I had uncles, my grandmother's brother, and a few others that had served in World War II that were pretty influential in my life. So there was a call to service. Not that the people in my family were, littered throughout the military. And I wanted to go in the Navy. I wanted to go in the Navy. I wanted to be a plumber.
Mm.
I go to the day I go to take my aptitude test at the high school. The Navy recruiter's not such a nice guy. The Air Force guy's a really nice guy. He says, I can help you out. I end up on my way to the Air Force, still wanting to be a plumber. The Air Force says, no, you should probably be a medic. And they put me
Mm.
in medicine, and it was absolutely the right thing to do. And I'll tell you,
Yeah.
growing up, I never thought about being in medicine or doing nursing or any of that type of stuff. And that's exactly where I landed. I had a high school teacher that once wrote on my paper that I should go in the military because I'd never make it in college. And we could talk a little bit about that because I thought, that's not a great way to get feedback from a teacher, but
Right.
I quickly found out that you're never out of school and when you're in the military. So, for
That's right. Yeah.
my 30 plus years, you're always in it to win it. So, yeah.
I was listening
So
to
that's,
another conversation you had, and you had mentioned when you first got started in the military, they gave you a book. And
yeah.
and so as soon as you got started,
The
you
first
got
day,
that book.
the first day. And so, So I think non-military people think that you go to basic training and you do push-ups for 23 hours and you sleep 1 hour. And then you do
Right,
push-ups for
right.
23 hours. That's what people think. You're constantly running, you're constantly sweating and that kind of stuff. Well,
Yeah.
no. No, there's a lot of time where you're standing in line to get a shot. There's a lot of times where you're standing in line to get paid or you're standing in line to get, there's appointments, there's stuff that you've got to go around just to get you in the Air Force, to build your file
Yeah.
for you to be a person, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
you do all of that other stuff. And in the Air Force, when I went in, physical fitness, it wasn't like being in the Marine Corps where physical fitness wasn't right at the top. Our stuff was being meticulous, right? So things had to be perfect and folded and those kind of things because you treated it like a toolbox when you're working on an airplane. And you can't screw up
Mm-hmm.
when you're working on an airplane. So, we worked
Mm-hmm.
on this high technical thing. And so that was going on. But yeah, they gave us this book and they said, when you're standing in formation, you'll be doing one of two things. You're standing at attention or you're reading the book. And me, I'm just dilly dallying around with the book. I'm like, yeah, whatever. And then there was a test, man. And you couldn't get, you didn't, it was a go, no go if you didn't pass the test.
Yeah.
So
Now tell me what was the book? Was it a book?
it,
Was it
it,
about
it,
basic training?
yeah,
What was it
yeah.
about?
It had information in there. Who was the first Secretary of the Air Force? Which was
Okay.
Stuart Symington. I'll never forget that for the rest of my life. Right. Yeah, it was just and basic things you needed to read. How do you
Mm.
how do you hold a hand slit, all that kind of stuff, and so
Yeah.
you had to take an actual written test to get out of basic training. People think if you just can run the distance and do the push-ups, you're good to go, and it's not that. So yeah,
Yeah.
and then at a certain point in time, after I was running around the world doing high speed things and thought that I should be promoted to chief of the world, somebody said, you got to do this education piece too to get promoted, and you got to study to get promoted. And
Mm.
for some reason in there, the light went on, and I thought, you know what? If I got to do all this education, then I'm going to do education. So I went to the education office and started to get the actual pieces of paper that go along with the hard work.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, it's the best thing I ever did. And when we talk about PTSD and moral injury, I'll tell you that um, oodles of education and higher level education probably saved my life. It probably kept me from pulling the
Mm.
trigger.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow. Well, I appreciate you sharing that, and let's talk about that a little bit too, because I
yeah,
know that you're serving and helping so many people. So after you or when you retire after 30 years of service, you're Air Force Command Chief Master Sergeant. So a lot of things from the age of 19 to 49 then transpired. What are you willing to share? And please share, what you think is good and necessary for the audience to help us to
sure,
understand more about PTSD and moral injury and just what so many people are going through who do think
sure,
about pulling the trigger and
sure,
how you were able to overcome that.
sure. Well, I'll tell you, there's a few things. So let's talk about being a guy first, right? Because
Yeah.
men have a bigger problem with that. So
Hmm.
we're kind of tattooed early on in life. To not think about the farm life, here maybe is a negative. Um, when cows got to be milked twice a day, 365 days a year, and 366 on leap year, um, you don't have time to be injured. You don't have time to be hurt, and you don't have time to be sick. And so we quote unquote power through. So I want everybody to hold that thought. The other thing that we're equipped with as men is a thing called pride.
Yeah.
And so we actually evaluate ourselves based on our actions, whether and how we're going to be perceived. Courageous, manly, what are my friends going to think about me? All those type of things. And if you really listen to men pick on each other, that's where they go when they really want to be funny. They go right after things that are prideful, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you come equipped with all of those things, and then you get into situations in life, and this is not a military thing. This is anything. This is a young lady that's been raped, right? There's PTSD and moral injury, and I'll separate the two for you. In my case, PTSD is just things that you can't unsee, unhear, and unsmell. It's just the reality, right? And when you can't those things, and they're there forever, then they're part of you, and you got to learn how to deal with them. And a lot of times we choose unhealthy ways to deal with them, and a lot of times that'll drive us into a place where we don't feel like we have any hope or we have any help. A lot of times the reason that you don't have hope and you don't have help is because your pride keeps you from getting hope, and your power through it keeps you from getting help, or or letting somebody help you to get hope. So it's this circular thing that can be a really tight knot. In my case, you take a 30-year career. I have a pretty successful career. I was doing a lot of cool stuff at a high level. Not that that's everybody's deal, but in the military, when you transition, everybody's doing a lot of things at a high level, no matter what your rank is, no matter how long you've served. These guys that are in the Marine Corps for 4 or 5 years, by the time they're out, they got 6 or 7 people's, at a minimum, 6 or 7 people's lives in their hands, and millions of dollars of equipment, and they're making split-second decisions based on training and those type of things that are really, really critical. And you come back into a non-military environment, and people don't know what you did. You can't write it down on a piece of paper. You don't have your buddies anymore. You don't have the camaraderie. Your sense of purpose is all over the place. You don't even know if that exists. And that can drive you into a bad spot.
Yeah.
Couple that with moral injury, and statistically, we're looking at about 40% of people that come out of the military have some level of moral injury. And it doesn't have to be tied to combat. It sounds like the moral injury, the descriptive, sounds like exactly what it is. We all have a morality. Ben, when you left home, your mom gave you some foundational things. Your religious beliefs give you foundational things. Whatever those things are, right? Give you foundational things, the foundational beliefs and things you just don't violate.
Mm-hmm.
We know that we don't kill other humans, right? We know that.
Yeah.
Well, think about that. If we collectively, almost all of us, are not comfortable with killing other humans because we're not supposed to be doing that, that's not a thing that we do. Yet now I'm in a profession that not only authorizes me to do it, exonerates me from any legalities from doing it, but actually trains me to do it, and then you do it. You can get morally injured because the way you're programmed, everything is counterintuitive to that. And so when you experience things that are outside of the box of your norm, that can set you up for PTS, and it can set you up for moral injury. And so, the military is the example that I'll use, but the military has doctrine and operational orders that override our morality quite often.
Wow.
And you don't have to be a Marine sharpshooter to get morally injured. You can be a finance technician or a finance apprentice craftsman or whatever their level. You can be at finance back in the stateside based work and get morally injured just based on your leadership, your organizational norms, or whatever orders you're given for that day.
Right.
So when those things happen, they put you to the test, because in the end you've got two choices, right? You can be an owner or you can be a victim. And I tell people that I'm the proud owner of PTSD and moral injury. 10 years ago, I would have told you, I would have had the victim mentality, and I would have blamed 10,000 reasons why everybody else was wrong and I was right, and had 1,000 excuses for why I wasn't working out anymore, and why I'd gained weight, and why my health wasn't the best it could be, and why I was, down on myself, and the things that were coming out of my mouth weren't very savory, and I was, stressed about things I shouldn't be, and I had no boundaries. I had absolutely no boundaries. I was all over the map.
Mm.
And when you're that far out of control, and people that knew me or would listen to this right now, they go, man, I just didn't see that. Well, why? Because you got to buck up. You got to be tough. You got to protect your pride.
Couldn't share any of it. Yeah.
As soon, and I will tell you, Ben, when you're right there at the moment of truth, I think the only difference when I talked about education, the only difference between pulling the trigger and not pulling the trigger is that experiences and education and understanding makes you realize that there's really not a lot of novel stuff in the world.
Mm.
If you have something going on in your life, somebody else has gone through it.
Right.
If you get 2 flat tires on the side of the highway in a driving rainstorm, you're not the first guy or gal. You're not. And if you can tell yourself that, if you can just tell yourself that one thing when you're having a major struggle in life, or as a leader, you're having a big challenge, or something happens in your organization or your family, no matter how awful you may think it seems, somebody, someone, something, or some organization has gone through the same thing.
Right.
And when you realize that, it means that somewhere, somebody has recovered from it and they pulled themselves out. And when you know that, that's your first edge of hope. But if
Was
you don't,
that what
but if
went through your head? Was that what went through your head when you're at that moment of truth?
I've got great kids and a great wife, and
Yeah.
I have some foundational things there that just say no. Right.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And that
Praise
stuff's
God.
important too. That's
It is.
amen.
Yeah.
And that stuff's important too. It's all a collective.
Right.
But
Yeah.
but I'll tell you, when it's gotten hard, even now, I mean, if a rock fell on the house right now and punched a big hole in the roof, right? I'd probably turn around and go, I know that there's at least one person in the world that just had a rock fall through the roof. So whoever that person is, even though I don't know them, we're gonna have to go through the same thing, right? Get on the phone, call the insurance company, and do step 1 and get on with it.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, I need to ask another question,
Sure,
and
you bet.
hope you don't think I'm being rude.
No.
You made the decision not to do it,
Yeah.
thankfully.
Yeah.
What happened immediately after that? Did you talk to your wife? Did you call 911? Did you talk to a buddy? Did you just keep it secret?
I kind of, the 2 times that I was probably the closest, I just kind of kept them secret. There was a transition point in there. There's a transition point in there between keeping it secret and going full blown, put my pride in the drawer, get over the, you've got it kind of thing. If you read my books, I write a chapter in there about crying. Even, people cry, people even cry on the farm. And I went through my whole last combat tour, and because of my leadership position, I didn't feel that I was in a position where I could cry. And we were doing trauma medicine, and we had people dying every day. And sometimes the whole trauma bay would be full of body bags, covered in American flags, and everybody around me is in tears, except me, because I didn't give myself permission to do that. And once I gave myself permission to do everything, it was just like, boom. As soon as I said, I need to get a counselor, as soon as, go talk to somebody. I think anybody that becomes a veteran, I don't care if you were in for 3 minutes or 330 years, you need to go see a professional counselor, professional therapist person at least 2 times, twice.
Okay.
At a minimum.
Yeah.
I absolutely think that, because you need that relationship, and they're going to ask you some questions, and they're going to get you to a place that you haven't even thought about. And if nothing else, you have that database to rely back on when you start experiencing some of the things that they warn you about, and then it gives you a safe place to go back to kind of circumvent this. But yeah, I hid out for a little bit. But I mean, after the second time, then I kind of said to myself, "You're not going to do this. You're not."
Right. Yeah.
But I can't cycle back. I can't have 5 of these. I can't have 10 of these things. I can't get to this level. And I said, well, obviously you suck at taking care of yourself in this deal. So you better own it. And as soon as I switched from, there's a great slide about owner and victim mentality.
Yeah.
As soon as I went from victim to owner, it all became productive. The polarity, it's just like a battery or a magnet. The polarity switched from negative to positive, and once it became positive, I thought, okay, well, it's all here. I better use it. I better start using it for the right reasons.
So this is so good, and I appreciate you sharing all of this, Dave. That takes a lot of strength to do that, and you know, other people who are out there listening, we have people around the world, and you know, I think this is really good, moving from that victim to owner. That's tough. It's a hard thing to do, but just, it sounds like there is hope. You're not the only one going through it. Go back to some of those foundational principles, things, people, relationships, to say, hey, listen, there is still a lot of value, obviously, with being here and living and moving forward. And what a blessing that you're able to do that. My son, he'll be 13, Lord willing, in August. And we're going through 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens by Sean Covey. His father wrote the original book, but you know, that it sounds like being proactive, this victim to ownership, because it's the idea of taking responsibility. And so when you said it, you know, it was just a light bulb that went on, and then you just took, okay, here's a step I can do, here's another step, and that certainly builds up that inner confidence. But even what you said too about giving yourself permission, what does that look like for someone who doesn't cry? You know, like I heard one guy on a podcast, and he never cried. My dad was an alcoholic. He typically cried after he was drunk, and he wasn't around for much of my life, very much like your dad. But this guy I was listening to, it took him months before he could actually shed a tear. Like, he would go out into the woods and scream and shout, and it was like nothing. So how long did it take you to finally not just say it, I give myself permission, but then it actually, you know, opened up the floodgates? And what tips do you have for those who are listening who may be in the same state?
I'll tell you, when I first started seeing my therapist, she's wonderful. She's actually turned into be a friend. I mean, yeah, I always tell her I'm going to reverse the charges on her, because sometimes because I'm a military guy, she's got these military clients, and she's like, explain this to me, explain that. So I'm drawing organizational charts and stuff. I tell her I'm reversing the charges on her.
Yeah,
But
that's right.
she's been fantastic.
Yeah.
I think sometimes if you're really, really stuck, I think that you have to have somebody else out loud say to you that it's okay. And this is this whole thing of you can't walk this alone. Here, I'll give everybody one out there that's really easy. And if you can just think of this even in your worst moments, because whatever's causing you pain, emotional pain, or you know, psychological, physical pain, whatever's causing you pain, uh, will drive us to these places, these unhealthy places. And so I want everybody to remember that we're like hot dogs. And we're like hot dogs in this way. If you take a hot dog and you put it in a microwave and you turn the microwave on for 30 seconds, when you open the door, it looks like a hot dog. But all the DNA has changed. And you can't unmicrowave the hot dog. So be the hot dog. You have to, and so whatever you are, whatever it is you, and that is the switch to own from victim to owner. Because the struggle is you want to go back. There's no Men in Black, man. It doesn't work. Nobody. It doesn't. There's not that. But you know what? We have movies and we have references. You know, Back to the Future, Men in Black. I'm dating myself a little bit, but we have references where we think, well, if I just do this, or if I just ignore this, or if I just tough it out, this is not a skinned knee. That if you just walk it off, it's going to scab up, and in 2 weeks you won't know it was there. It's not that. It is you. It is your DNA. So be what you are. And if what you are requires you to get help, go get it. But make friends with it. Hug it, love on it, appreciate it for what it is, and then get to a place where you can sit down and have a conversation with Ben and work through this stuff. Because it's not
Yeah.
perfect, Ben. I have my bad days. But you know what? When I'm
Right.
having a bad day, you know what I do? I tell my wife and I pick up the phone and I tell anybody else that I'm going to be around that day. This is what's going on. This is what's in my mind. This is why it is the way it is, and this is
Mm,
how you can help me. And then I go
mm.
on.
That's very wise. Yeah, I like that. I like that. Thank you. Well, and
Yeah.
that's great communication skills, and maybe with the education and going through all these different things, that's a hard thing for people to do. We can just brush that off of nothing. I'm fine. I don't want to talk about it. But at least you're keeping that support group there, and people can keep tabs on you or help you out or encourage you in some shape or form.
And that's
Yeah.
why when you truly love people and you're in their inner circle, if you're on somebody's life team, if they've let you on their life team and at that level of intimacy,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes when you just reach out to people and you go, hey Ben, even if you're texting, hey Ben, I haven't heard from you in a while. Sometimes, more times than not, I get, oh, I'm so glad that you reached out. And then all of a sudden it's, the phone rings or it's let's go to coffee, and then there's this big download and you kind of get to intervene that way. So don't
Right.
isolate. Don't isolate.
Okay.
Even when you're angry, because anger, man, we're good at that, right?
Oh
We
yeah.
got
Oh yeah.
issues. Somebody somebody
Yeah.
somebody hits the trigger, and when the first thing that we do, we get mad, right? And then the people that love us
Yep.
go, "You're so angry, man." If anybody ever, it's like alcoholics, right? If somebody ever tells you,
Mm-hmm.
Ben, you've been drinking too much, that's like a thing. That's in the questionnaire. Has anybody told you that you have been drinking too much? If you check that, it
Mm.
probably means that you're at least abusing alcohol, right?
Mm.
If people say to you, "Why are you so angry?" That's a check block that says, I need to go get help.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
I need some
Mm-hmm.
intervention, right? So even if it's people that care about you, or if it's somebody at work or somebody that just says, "Man, you're always so angry," or just the littlest thing sets you off. What's the matter? That means that you are out of control. You need help.
Right.
You've got to go
Yeah.
get somebody to help you get through that.
Yeah.
People talk about anger management. I think it's man management.
Tell me more.
Well, okay, so men, and I'll get a lot of north south from guys out there, and there's other guys that will click off when I say this.
Okay.
Men are externally strong and internally weak. And what I mean by that is we are always on the threshold of being outed because we think that we're being outed. We perceive that people see us a certain way based on our gender.
Hmm.
And so it's always the bigger, tougher thing. This is high school kids standing around a pickup, telling each other they're going to beat each other up. It's all
Right.
this posturing thing, and we're posturing so much that we make ourselves weak internally. We can't handle anything that comes that
Hmm.
comes at us that is insulting or might put us in a situation where we look a certain way. And none of it's true. It's the total facade. So think about a woman that you love when you've been really struggling, and you said, honey, I can't do that. The guys will say this. And they go,
Hmm.
that's not how people see you. Nobody sees you like that. The only person that sees you that way is you.
Mm-hmm.
And so we men have got to get over that, because when you get over that, you become much, much stronger. Much
How do we?
stronger. And you can lead more people in a more diverse groups and all of that stuff. You become uber powerful.
How
But
do we do it?
you gotta well, there's two ways to learn how to swim. You can walk down the steps in the shallow end, or you can jump in.
Yeah. So it's better off
Uh,
just to do the full
uh, uh,
immersion.
as long as there's somebody on the side of the pool to pull you out in case you're drowning. But other than that, yeah, get on in. Get on
So
in.
what would that look like then in the real world? So whether it's husband
Mm,
and wife, so
yeah.
or father and son. So while you're thinking about that, so much of this resonates where you know I took some counseling in 2020 and just this past year again. I felt like there were some things I needed to resolve and check under the hood. And my dad was he was an alcoholic and physically abusive to my mom, and so that's that. things that you can't unsee, unhear,
Right.
undo, but you have to somehow figure that out and get some help. And it has helped out, quite a bit. But yeah, tell us more about, how do guys do that? There's a book I'm reading. I know I want to talk to you about leadership too. I think the
Sure.
title of the book is Deception in Leadership or something like that. But I know,
Sure.
biases and,
Yeah.
there's
Well,
just things we miss in ourselves. You know what I mean?
okay. So, perception and bias are and assumptions are killers. They're
Yeah.
absolutely killers. And we work and men are pretty good at that. Men are pretty good at working off of that. That's our survival instinct, right? That's our hunter instinct. Is you look at something and you look at a bear at 50 yards and you say it's that kind of bear and it's that big and this is what it's going to take to eat it or shoo it away or whatever you need to do. So, but all of those are assumptions and you might be wrong. So I actually do a keynote speech called Closing the 25-Yard Gap, and it's predicated on a military barracks because I was a student leader in a military barracks. And so here's Dave, dairy farming kid from Northern California, grew up in a town of 5,000 in a Portuguese community with a high percentage of Mexican immigrants. And now I'm in charge of 12 guys in a military barracks with guys from all over the nation, but the majority of them from inner city Philadelphia. The guy at the other end of my flight, 25 yards away, didn't look like me. He looked a lot more like you. And I had a bias, assumptions, and perception, and I had my hometown tools, which included my vernacular, my set of jokes, and the words I used. That wasn't working, Ben. That
Yeah.
wasn't working. And if I didn't have the courage, I did this at 19 years old. If I didn't have the courage to walk that full 25 yards, close that gap, and sit down with Airman Bradley was his name, and him and I ended up being good friends. He became a medic too. If I didn't have the courage to sit down with Bradley and close that gap, blow up my assumptions, blow up my perceptions, and blow up my bias, and reground myself in something that was actually real or as close to 100% as real,
Yeah.
I would have failed as an airman, and my Air Force career would have been done right there in the first 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And you
Got to
got to
close the
navigate.
gap.
And so you have these internal assumptions and bias that you have got to close the gap with, which means you have to say out loud what you think. And then you have to listen to people say, I know that's what you think, but here's the reality. And then you got to close the gap on that. And then you have to reset and take actions on what is real. Now, you want to scare somebody? Have them perceive something for 30 years of their life and have somebody blow it up and tell them it's not real. That is pretty scary.
Yeah.
So it takes some personal courage to do this. But I'm telling you, there's and I'm not. So we're going to talk leadership, and I don't want to go down this rabbit hole because I'm not a fan. I'm not a Simon Sinek fan, and I'm not a Brene Brown fan. Okay.
Okay. All right.
And I'll tell you why. It's because you and I could both be NFL quarterbacks sitting in the 300 seats. We get it right every time. Okay. If I'm glad that analogy resonated with you. You must be a football fan.
Listen, I'm a football fan, but I love your analogies, and I know you talk a lot in stories, and I'm eating it all up, man.
Yeah, so if I want to be a gladiator, I should be hanging out with gladiators.
That's right. You got to be in the fight. Yeah.
And you got to smell the sweat, and you got to feel the pain, and you got to do those things. And so sometimes, but you don't always throw the baby out with the bathwater.
That's true.
So if you're gonna consume these things, right, consume them with open mind, and find the nuggets and pull it out. And that's what the front end of my first book is all about that. These are a bunch of nuggets that I have. I'm going to throw them all out there. Some you'll think are BS, and others you'll just grab onto, and it's good. And if you've got a 13-year-old son, I'm going to send you a copy of both my books because he should probably read them.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate
just
that.
give me your address at the end of that, and you could
All right.
you could go through it with them. But it's for a 13-year-old. It's kind of like a workbook because the chapters are short and the back ends are full of little one-liners.
Yeah. Okay.
But Brene Brown talks about this thing of vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
And the first time I read the book, I thought, oh, that's just too squishy. I mean, I can't talk, because I speak publicly. I said, man, I can't talk about vulnerability in my journey because the guys will shut off. It's effeminate, it's soft, it's yucky. What is vulnerability? I think vulnerability, the definition, when we're talking about the things we're talking about, the definition of vulnerability is actually ultimate strength.
Mm.
You've become as powerful as you can be dealing with the microwaved changes of your hot dog through vulnerability. If you really want the ultimate power, you have to be vulnerable. It doesn't work the other way. There is no more, grin and bear it. Grit is another word. You'll hear grit come out. These people that write these 300 level leaders, right? 300, they're in the 300 seats, go on. That guy was wide open. Yeah, but there's 400-pound man laying on his back. So, that stuff drives me crazy. I'm a Dolphins fan, by the way. So I have, my quarterback's got people laying all over him all the time.
Yeah, I know. He's got to be careful down there.
Yeah, it's crazy. It doesn't work that way. It works the opposite way. The energy and the power and the ownership and the healing and the getting better comes with the vulnerability. And that's not boo-hooing and slobbering and snot coming out of your nose and crying. It's just saying out loud, this is how I feel and I need some help. Or,
gotcha.
Yeah, it's just be descriptive. Take your inner and put it on the outside. Do it safely. Don't run down to the the VFW and pull up a bar stool and go, here I am and blah blah blah. Because if you dump it all out there, 2 or 3 guys are going to make a joke about it and they're going to blow you off, and that's not safe.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're sitting with people that truly love you, if you tell them how you feel, they'll react to that.
Yeah.
They'll react to it.
Yeah. That's good. I want to dive into that just a little bit more. I was listening to a podcast yesterday, a leadership, I think it's a Covey leadership podcast, and they had a gentleman on there with the book about being a unicorn and standing out in leadership. Do you think vulnerability has gotten to like an extreme point where, especially with social media, where it's like you're meeting someone and you just tell them every single detail, or it almost feels like some people feel like they have to do it now. What I'm hearing from you, though, is as you think about relationships, the close relationships, that inner circle, or people you can trust, it's not just doing it for a show, but it's actually to communicate and to say, hey, this is where I am. Here's what I need from you. Do you think vulnerability has gone to like the extreme with all the different books that are out there, and just the idea about everybody's got to say every single thing, which I know that we don't do that, or you can't always do that, or probably shouldn't. But what do you think? Has it gone too far?
I think when I was a young kid, my cousin Loretta told me to get on a horse with her. We didn't have a saddle. She just said, get on the horse, right? And I trusted her. And so I got on the horse and she said, give me your belt. So I trusted her and I gave her my belt. And she whipped the horse. And I fell off and I busted my head open. If I could flip around, I'd show you. I got a big scar on the back of my head. And I busted my head open. I've never ridden a horse with her again. I love her to death. We've done a lot of things together. I've never gotten on a horse with her again.
Mm-hmm.
You need to use your vulnerability in a way that you're not going to fall off the horse.
Gotcha.
Because if you use your vulnerability and it backfires on you, then the odds are that you're not going to use that tool. And it's a very important tool, but it has to be used the right way in the right situations. So to answer your question, there's a couple things there, Ben. To answer your question, so I am right on the line of X and Boomer. In fact, my wife is a Boomer and I'm an X, and we're 6 months apart. So I'm that generation. Okay. We grew up in a world where there wasn't a lot of vulnerability. And when people asked you how you were doing, the answer was good, or I'm okay. You didn't even say I'm having a crappy day or anything. If you run into a millennial or even some Z's and you ask how they're doing, they'll go, well, I just got back from the clinic and I got diagnosed with herpes because I slept with a guy that I haven't been with. And you go, whoa, 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 whoa. You got me way too deep in your life now. I was just checking on, and they're like, no, it's okay. And off they go. So you've got, and you know what? And they are fine with it. They are absolutely fine. They don't care if 300 people know, right?
Yeah.
Which, so here again, bias, assumption, and perception, right? And so we go, well, that person's totally inappropriate. And actually, maybe they're mentally healthier. Maybe they've accelerated the whole process and they're not suffering for 10 years. Maybe they've offloaded in 10 minutes. We can't. I don't know, but what I'm going to tell you is I am not going to take my perception of what I know is my reality and apply it to that person and make it a negative. If that's what that person needs to function in a healthy manner, great. The only person that it made uncomfortable was me, and I don't have herpes. It's probably a bad example, but for effect, right? So, but you see what I'm saying?
I do. Yeah.
So I think that there's some magic in that. It's weird.
Okay.
It's weird because it's not our norm. It's weird to us. To them, it's not. And if you ever can go eavesdrop on a Z millennial conversation. You'll have sweat running off your forehead, and they're giggling and laughing.
Yeah, it's no big deal.
So where's the 25-yard gap that needs to be closed? And I spent a lot of I took all millennials to war. I led millennials in war. So you can't really talk bad about millennials because I saw them do some amazing things. So,
Thank you for that. That's good.
Yeah. So
how do you define leadership?
Squishy, non-linear, continuous. There's continuous motion in leadership. It requires you to be able to juggle, but not like a manager. It requires you to be able to sprint, but not like a manager. I'm separating the two, because if the managers out there, if I say juggle, they're going, oh, I'm a great multitasker. That's not what I meant. If I say sprint, they say, oh yeah, I can get things done quickly. That's not what I meant. What I'm talking about is you can have 3 people in the room all with the same problem, and you got to be 3 different leaders. So you really have to be a diagnostician. And, I think, in medicine helps, and so does farming help with leadership. Because, in farming, you need to be able to look at a cow and see if she's sick, see if she's ill, see if she needs to go to the sale, all these kind of things that, you're constantly diagnosing things. And you need to learn to diagnose people. So think about leadership as a medical appointment. What brings you in today, right? What brings you in today? It hurts when I do this. Oh, well, what have you been doing with that arm? Well, I've been chopping wood. Oh, are you left-handed? No. Well, why do you think your left elbow hurts? Well, I have to hold the wood in a certain position. So how long have you been doing that, right? And so already you know that they might have tendonitis, right? So you go down that road, and then you start explaining to them, this is tendonitis. This is how we're going to make it better, and so on and so forth. And here's probably how you should chop wood, and here's some ideas on how to do that. The next person comes in, and you say, what can I do for you today? And they say, I hate everybody in the world. And you say, why? And they say, I can't play golf. Now, oh, golf's important to you? Yeah. Well, they can't play golf because they have tendonitis from chopping wood, and they've got the same problem. But you got to take care of that the whole different way.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. And so you can have the same problem, but you can't just say, oh, the last person that was in here, I gave him this piece of paper, told him to go see this person, and go have a conversation with HR. No. It all has to be individual, and it has to feel individual. So my definition of leadership is innocuous. Leadership is innocuous, and if you try to nail it down, it's just like nailing Jello to a board.
Oh,
Don't
that's
do
great.
it. Don't do
Don't
it.
do
If I walk into your office and you've taken a razor blade and cut that last page out of that last book that you read, and you've pinned
it.
it in your cubicle, and it starts with 1 and it ends with 10, and you go, look, I'm a leader. I'm going to tell you, no, 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 you're not. You're turning yourself into a pseudo leader with hyper management skills, maybe, but you're not a leader.
Mm,
You're not
yeah.
a leader. And sometimes, your credibility as a leader has to come with, listen, you know why you and I don't announce NFL games? Because we're probably good enough to do it. Wait, you
Yeah.
and I
Why
could do the
not?
research and get the stat. You know why we don't do it? Because when somebody goes, and today's color commentator is Dave Nordel, and he did 30 years in the United States Air Force, and he's a medic. Somebody go, well, who did he play for? Oh, well, he played in high school, but he didn't go beyond that. Well, get that guy off of there. He's out.
That's right.
So don't show up as an imposter. Don't, just because the name badge says manager or director or something on there, don't think that something osmosis through that little piece of plastic into your body that replaces experience and scars and blood and sweat and tears and all of the work that it takes to get to the
Yeah.
position that you're at, because you were leading where you're at a level that they want to put you in with a more responsibility to lead again, because you've demonstrated that.
Mm,
The other thing is that leadership is an art. It's a science. It's not a science. It's an art, and there's no leadership. It's like medicine. It's the art of medicine. It's not the practice. It's not the perfection of medicine. You're always practicing. That's why they say practice medicine. It's the practice of
yeah.
leadership.
Yeah. That's so good, Dave. I appreciate that, man. This is a blast, and you know how to tell the stories. I do some coaching with Ultra Speaking, and we have a game called Analogies or Rapid Fire Analogies, and I just love how you're painting the pictures of all these things, and it's so sticky. I like to say that it's sticky, and so our leadership can't be like putting Jello on a wall and a thumbtack, and it's so true. It just I'm never going to forget any of this. So
Yeah,
I had not heard it described like that, with the idea of it being squishy. And I do think there is something with what you're saying too. I think leadership books, there are thousands of leadership books. So, John Maxwell, he would often say, leadership is influence, or everything rises and falls with leadership. But I love how you expanded upon that. And yeah, we can't be an imposter. I think it was Teddy Roosevelt, talking about the man in the arena, and you have to
that's
have that experience. There's only
it's
one way to grow, and that's it, right? Yeah.
yeah,
So,
I talked to people ask me a lot. I did a podcast where it was it was quasi political. The guy wanted me on to talk about the assassination attempt on Trump because I'd worked with the Secret
mhm.
Service in the past.
Oh, I did not know that. Wow.
And it was brief. I'm not talking like I was in the team and I was running all over the place. There's a few times that I was attached to the Secret Service to do presidential coverage as the medic. But when you're
Gotcha.
integrated into the team, you're integrated into the team. You got the little microphone, you got the call sign, you're part of the whole shoot. So
Yeah.
I know how that process works. So um but everything that we kept talking about with that situation and others kept evolving back to this leadership thing. Listen, if you're leading a whole bunch of rats and the rats are a little bit unruly, hire the Pied Piper. If you're leading a bunch of sumo wrestlers, you should probably hire a sumo wrestler, because the Pied Piper
Mhm.
and his little flute ain't going to buy it, because they aren't going to all get in a line and follow him down the street. It just ain't going to
That's right.
happen,
It ain't gonna
right?
happen.
But
Yeah.
the Pied Piper can become a sumo wrestler, but he has to lead from a position of humility,
Yeah.
inquisitiveness, and he has to become a student at the same time that he's trying to lead an organization. And he has to be fully transparent with what his gaps are and empower people to fill those gaps and trust them. Deference to expertise, you can win the game. But that's the squishy jello. If you don't understand
That's
deference
the
to
squishy
expertise,
jello. Yeah.
Yeah. So think about that. So now we're guys and we're full of pride and we got this badge and we're supposed to be in charge. And now all of a sudden I'm going to say, well, Billy's the smartest guy in the room on this. I'm going to let Billy do it. Do you know how
Yep.
mature that takes to be?
Yeah.
I'll give you a personal example. We were working a multi-million dollar project to build new training facilities I was the command chief at a base in Washington State. This required interactions with some very, very senior level congressional people because that money was going to be appropriated through the National Defense Authorization Act. This is high level stuff. These are heavy hitting people, super influential people. You know, the chairman of the House Finance Committee is involved in this. But it was kind of my project because it spawned off of something else that I was trying to do for the health and morale and welfare of the airmen. And so the phone calls would come to the headquarters building to talk about this issue. My boss, the commander, right, the owner of all these things, who was the face of all this stuff, one day he said, it's the chief's thing. And everybody goes, but sir, it's Congress. And he goes, I don't know anything about it. Do we want to get the thing or do you just want me to talk to congressmen? And everybody looked at him and they said, send the phone calls to the chief. And he took his hands completely. Now you think about that. All the FaceTime that he could have had with all these important people. These people that talk on CNN all the time, there's still people that pop up there that I know from this thing. They're still on it. But he let me do it. Well, guess what? We competed with the whole Department of Defense for 4 projects and we got that done.
Wow.
So it didn't take the guy with the biggest name on his badge. It took the guy with the biggest name on his badge to let the guy that knew how to do it do it.
Right.
That's leadership, Ben. And that guy, and that's the guy that I called to come and officiate my retirement after 30 years of service.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. Yep, that's exactly right. It makes me think about a preacher. He would say this, pride must be put aside, self must be put on the shelf, and ego has to go. And if someone can do it better, you're exactly right. That's a great mark of maturity and wisdom. And that's so good. I appreciate you sharing that.
Well, your preacher's words are great ones to stick on the wall if you're struggling with mental health too. Because those are some pretty good tools right there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, with the time left, I want to be respectful of your time. Let's talk about Max Fab Consulting. Maximum Fabulous, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yes.
Consulting. How did this get started? You're the CEO of it. You're giving back to other veterans.
Right.
And for those who are listening, I definitely want you to share, resources or where they can find you and things like that for sure.
Oh boy, you stepped in it, man. It's all about story. So for those watching on the video, if you look behind me, you'll see the flag back there, and on the bottom of that flag it says Maximum Fabulous. When I took my last batch of medics to Iraq in 2008, about 380, me and the commander. I knew it was during the surge in 2008, and I knew it was going to be painful, and it was going to be fearful. And there was a lot of young people that were involved, and just a lot of humans being involved in doing and carrying out things that aren't normal. It's just not normal for humans, not especially people that look like you, that are your brothers and sisters in uniform, and we had a hell of a survival rate. But it came down to 2 things: got to share some pain, which was push-ups because I hate them. And so we were going to do a lot of push-ups, and we had to have some sort of organizational attitude that helped us survive to get home mentally, physically, and emotionally in the right spot. And so without giving the full keynote speech, which it's a full keynote speech, without giving the full keynote speech, I will tell you that my day started off in a long hallway where our offices were attached to the actual emergency department and the trauma center, right from where the helicopters came in. And the entranceway to the hallway in the first office was the chaplain's office. Mine was at the other end of the hallway. And I would get on my knees every morning with the chaplain. Sometimes it was a rabbi, sometimes it was a Catholic priest. I'd go on and on and on. It was just the potpourri, the chaplain du jour. And I get on my knees and have him pray on me for some foundational stuff. And the magical thing was all the words were always the same. It didn't matter if they had a yarmulke on or if they had a collar. So it was pretty cool. And when I would hit the first place, and we would do some push-ups and share some pain, which the Air Force people all freak out when you say push-ups, and the Army guys are on their face just loving it. So but when I would stand up, and they would say, Chief, how you doing today? And I'd say, you know what, I'm maximum fabulous.
Yeah.
And initially people would be like, what in the heck is that? And I said, well, that's the top rung of the attitudinal scale. And attitude is the one thing that we control every day. And if you're not working towards getting to max fab, then you need to work at it. You need to get some help working at it. And anybody next to you that's not max fab, you need to work towards getting there, because that's the only way that we're going to get out of here in some level of health. And it stuck. It stuck to the point that they took that flag off the top of the trauma center, which all of our men and women crossed underneath that flag, and they're probably in some of the worst times in their lives. And we had a 99.5 survival rate if you got to us with a heartbeat. And they embroidered that stuff on the flag with a maximum fabulous on the bottom of it. So,
that's so cool. That's great.
So the company Max Fab comes out of that because, obviously we have to shorten everything. So it was, people pump their fist and yell Max Fab. And for those of you out there that want to experiment with it, just go to your next coffee shop. And when the girl does the obligatory greeting and says, how are you today? Say it loud enough, but go, I'm maximum fabulous. It'll freeze the store. Productivity will stop. All the heads are going to whip around and look at you like, what is up with that? What's wrong with that guy? And then you can steal my words and tell them, that you're at the top of the rung of the attitudinal scale and you control it. So that's what you're going to be. And people, you'll see heads nod, people smile. So, I obviously landed on something. Max Fab turned into a program called Vet Ready, which is now Vet Ready Incorporated, which is a nonprofit. And we're just getting off the ground. I won't tell you we're world renowned or we're in every business or every organization, but we're places and we're having really good conversations. And so, I'm really encouraged. It's been 3 years of work, and anybody that's opened a business knows the first 2 years is chasing around the administrivia and the things that go along with that and trying to establish things. But so. Through my transition and all these things we talked about, the one thing that I realized is the landing places that we have as veterans just aren't really educated into this veteran transition and the phenomenon. And people can't help you if they don't have the knowledge to help. And so companies that want to hire veterans, that have hired veterans, we go in and give them the tools that they need to understand the nuances of this veteran transition. Not just the bads and the PTSDs and all that other stuff, because that's a possibility, but how to mine a veteran and all of this cool stuff that we come with the leadership and the problem solving and all of those type of things, and how to best leverage that. And to understand, just because a guy was a soldier on a mortar team, he can probably be one of your managers almost anywhere in your organization, because the learning, remember how I told you, you can lead, if you can lead humbly and learn at the same time, and veterans will figure out the nuances of any task rather quickly. But those other things are hard to find in an organization and they're hard to grow. So right now, about 50% of veterans leave their job in the first year because of this, and we don't want that anymore. So we got to give people the right tools, and we got to set veterans up for success. We don't put our kids in daycare without vetting the daycare and spending a lot of time there and talking to parents that have their kids there, and then keeping an eye on our kid for 6 months. But with veterans, we drive you to the curb and go in that building. I hope it works out for you. Yeah. So there's another 25-yard gap, and we, in this country, no matter where we're at currently or where we're going to be in 10 years, and quite frankly, I'm old enough now to tell everybody out there, this reeks, bad word. It smells an awful lot like the late 60s and early 70s when I was a pretty impressionable kid, but the environment feels identical. So remember when I told you, nothing's novel.
Yep.
Nothing is novel.
Yep.
So we need to clean some things up, and there should never be a veteran sleeping on the streets and there shouldn't be anybody sleeping on the streets, quite frankly.
That's right.
But in my context, there should never be a veteran sleeping on the streets. And if you truly mean it when you say thank you for your service, then you need to, when you're given the opportunity, you need to take a couple extra steps and do the work to really thank us, which means getting us back home the right way.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Will do. Dave, you've been a blessing to me. This has been fantastic.
Amen.
I think
Same
I
as
could
that.
listen to you talk for hours, and so much wisdom. And where can people find you? Where can people find your books and your company?
Sure. Two places. Max Fab Consulting. So MAXFAB Consulting.com. That'll give you some of the nuts and bolts. And you go there to look at my blogs and my podcasts that I've done, my Cars Ben, and then the Kangaroo Leadership Podcast, which I do. But more importantly, you can book some time with me. And if you want me to book to come and speak and do some 25-yard gap and some max fab and those kind of things, you think the organization needs that, I'm more than happy to. I'll tailor speeches to wherever you think your organization needs and to do those kind of things. And then for Vet Ready, it's getvetready.org. Getvetready.org. There's a donation button on there. You can throw us a couple bucks and it helps offset the costs. And we can take away the pain point of businesses having to do this, at least the financial piece. So yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Well, we buddy of mine just started a camp for young boys. It's a father-son camp, and we're calling it Making Good Men. So I'll definitely have to talk to him, see if maybe we can get you down here in Texas one day. I think you
Oh
could do
yeah,
a lot of
you
good
bet.
here.
Oh, you bet.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I'll talk. Yeah, I'd love that. So yeah, you bet.
yeah,
And
awesome.
I know when you stop here, we'll have a chance to talk. But I gotta
Yeah,
get some book. I gotta get some books in the mail for you.
yeah, absolutely. Dave, thank you so much, and for everyone listening, thank you for tuning in, and really appreciate all that you have done for us here today, Dave.
You bet. My pleasure. Go out there and have an absolutely maximum fabulous day.
Take care.